Welcome to the Art of Badassery, where I explore what it takes to live life on your own terms, break free from the status quo, and unleash your inner badass. Whether you're a rebel at heart or simply seeking inspiration to step outside your comfort zone, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman, and each week I dive into the stories, insights, and strategies of those who have mastered the art of badassery and are living life to the fullest. They smile when no one is looking. This episode is brought to you by Empowered Collaboration, increasing empowerment through motivation, collaboration, communication, and connection. Hey, fierce women, ready to break free from fears and embrace the confidence you've always wanted? Join me, your badass coach, and fellow coach Jody Graham, for a transformative week at our Empower You retreat in the breathtaking Mexican Riviera from January 16th to 23rd, 2025. Our 7-day program is designed to help women overcome self-doubt and cultivate unshakable confidence. Rejuvenate with sunrise meditations, empowering workshops, and soulful conversations. Your spouse or BFF can enjoy the nearby PGA golf course while you focus on growth. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. We'll see you there. And now, back to the show. Welcome to the Art of Badassery podcast. Today, I have a truly inspiring guest with me in the studio. Meet Abbie Westgate, a former UK police sergeant who courageously left her dream career to start a transformative business called Healing Blue Hearts. Abbie's coaching practice is dedicated to supporting emergency responders, helping them heal, reconnect, and really just elevate their lives by integrating somatic awareness and nervous system regulation techniques. You're going to hear all about that. She guides her clients from stress, burnout, and disconnection to optimizing their energy and getting a more meaningful connection back in their life, their career, and their relationships. Currently training as a somatic breathwork practitioner, Abbie's excited to share this powerful practice with the world. So grab your favorite drink, get ready to be inspired by her really badass journey. Abbie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mara. Thank you so much for having me. That was an amazing introduction. Thank you.
You're an amazing girl. That's why you're on the show. Let's talk about it.
For
Okay.
sure.
When we first met, I was so enamored by your sharing with me that you had been a cop in England. And I say this because I love cop shows and I'm currently addicted to BritBox. My husband and I watch cop shows all the time. So I mean, obviously TV is TV and reality is different, but can you take us back to what drew you to being a policewoman in the first place?
Yeah, so we're going back around 15 years is when I first wanted to be in the police, and it wasn't something I had initially thought of. But then I was on a training program and there was a police officer there on her training, and I remember she pulled me to the side and said, "Have you ever thought about joining the police?" And I said, "Oh no, like not for me." I came from a background where everyone hated the police. So for me, that I'd never really thought about that at all. But it planted a bit of a seed. And I remember I went home that night and I looked into it and I was like, why have I never thought about this? Like, this seems amazing. I get to use a lot of my life experiences to help other people. And what I really wanted was to help people feel safe. So I can remember late night journeys home on, we've got like a metro system, like a train. And just remembering when the police would get on a night time, I would just instantly feel safe and relaxed. And I was like, that's what I want to give to the community. I want my presence to help people feel that safety that I felt just from, the presence of a police officer. So that really kind of inspired me. However, we were at a point in our economy where there was austerity measures, and it took me about 8 years before the force started to recruit again. So in that time, I was undertaking jobs that I thought would be really good experience. I was learning to drive. I was getting my qualifications up. So it really was like a full journey of about 15 years, including the 6 years service. But there was that period before where I was like putting my heart and soul into preparing myself to this dream job that like I just fell in love with.
So I want first of all, that is badass to have that level of determination to wait 8 years to have the opportunity to apply. But you mentioned that it had never been on your radar to join the police. Police weren't really looked upon with happiness in your world. What was the response of your family and friends when you said, "Hey guys, guess what? I want to join the cop. I want to be a policewoman." What was their response?
So they were actually really proud and like loved that. There were a few people who like, so I would say my brothers who were still a little bit more embedded in the community that I grew up in, who didn't see it as a positive and were like, oh, don't speak to me if you're going to be a cop. But everybody else just embraced it and like got on board with that journey that I wanted for me too. They were fully invested in it. And when I got to that point and I landed the job and I was there, like there was so many people that were celebrating that for me as well. So it was lovely.
Oh, I love that story. That's great. But well, did it take any courage to actually, because there's a level of excitement, right? We have an excitement about something, but when you actually get into it, did there ever come a point where you thought, okay, I need to really dig deep and be courageous to do this because this is perhaps bigger than I thought, scarier than I thought? Any of those thoughts go through your mind when you were training, for example?
So there's a bit of a story. I'm pleased you've asked this question because it actually feeds us nicely into my experience. So just before I was about to join, at that point I was engaged, I'd landed my dream job, but just before I was about to join, I lost my mum. So my mum died suddenly. And so when I actually started the job, I always feel it was kind of over before it started because I went in with this huge bereavement. I didn't know anyone in that organization. I didn't have any support there. And I very quickly learned that I had to get my head down and get on with things. It wasn't the kind of environment that was going to support me in my grief. So I suppressed a lot of my emotions to be able to get through and survive. And that's why I often say it was kind of over before it started because I paid down the line for that. That was kind of like the halfway point when that all came to a head. But I suppose that was the thing for me. And I found that because of my experience outside of the police, like when I was actually in the police, they served me so well and like the job felt so natural and dealing with people and incidents and like it just felt like so natural and I loved it. But for me, it was the fact that I'd had a really big bereavement and trying to navigate this new big career where that required a lot of commitment. And that kind of happening simultaneously, that was my challenge.
Okay. Yeah, I can see the way you're describing it. And thank you for sharing your story. I'm sorry that you lost your mom. I can only imagine. But I can see that there is a necessity for a certain level of, I don't want to say strength, but you mentioned I had to dampen down my bereavement to navigate the world of being a policewoman. And I can see how that would be difficult after a while because this stuff inside has to be dealt with. This is what you and I both do now as coaches. How long was it into your training or into your work that you realized this other stuff was really getting in the way?
So, what I noticed when I had started to suppress emotions and started to experience numbness and focusing more on mindset work and goals, that there was like a knock-on effect on like other areas of my life. So, like things were spilling out. So, whilst I was trying to have all this control and work towards goals and just focus on getting through my training, other things were happening. So I was engaged and then that relationship ended. Then I was having other issues in future relationships that were starting to be the same pattern happening over and over again, which I was like, why is this happening? And the more I was trying to push and control and keep a lid on things and make things so restrictive, which was also a sign of the fact of how out of control I felt internally, the fact that I was so like trying to grasp onto my external world. But then I hit a point of burnout where my body was like, you've pushed me too far. Like, we are ill now. We're not going to do anything. We're not doing this anymore. And at that point, I was physically ill, and then all the grief, everything I'd been suppressing, all the emotions, all the pain, just was like a volcano. It just all at once was like, here you go. Here's all the things that you've been avoiding. And by the way, you're too poorly to actually avoid this now. So here you go. That was like the real catalyst moment of change for me, like it was about 2 years ago when that happened.
So when that happened, what was the response of your peers at work? In other words, did the UK police system at that time have adequate support for you? Did they recognize what you were going through? Was it a concern to them?
I think this is like the bit that always makes me feel really sad because it was something that I'd, given my all to, and I'd been a really high performer. Like, I'd been promoted after 3 years and had a really good reputation. But when I got to this point where things had just kind of it got too much and had, came over that threshold, like, and some of the issues had started at work because I'd had a relationship at work that had gone wrong, and that had caused issues with some of my colleagues. So there was other dynamics going on as well. And then at this point where I'd had the health issues, there was a small element of support, but actually there was a real lack of understanding as to what was actually going on. And I did have an experience where some colleagues turned against me, like they turned away from me, and there was a lot of rumors and gossip, and just to feel like I was alone in somewhere that I'd just given like my all to, and it'd been like my dream, like to be in that moment where I felt so unseen and unsupported, and the feeling like that it was being viewed as more of a performance issue as opposed to the fact that actually I've just got all these like things going on in my life, and what I need is some support. That really hurt. That really hurt. And I think at that moment, that's when I knew the dream was over for me because it was never going to be the same. Like, I was never going to have the same relationship. So despite I wasn't in a position to move on then because I was so unwell and had so much going on, but like my dream died like inside of me at that point.
I'm sure that a lot of our listeners can relate to this idea of the dream dying. How did you resurrect it? Because you're sitting here with us today, right?
Mm.
What was it that allowed you, or where did you get the energy or the impetus to keep going, to keep searching, to keep working, to keep dreaming?
Yeah, I think thinking back on that time, that was like a real rock bottom moment and like a real crossroads moment of me thinking, at that point, I felt like, can I continue in this life? But when I was really questioning that decision, like, would I really call this like the end of my life? Can I really just leave things there? I suppose that really opened up the fact that there was a part of me that wanted to heal, but I wanted to heal properly. And I feel like I made that decision, like I I made that decision and then the path just kind of appeared in front of me. Like, that's the way I describe it. And I didn't know it at that time because it's like hindsight, you're like, wow, that led to that, and then that led to that. I just went with it. But it just kind of feels like there was this new path that opened up when I truly committed to, like, okay, I'm going to do the healing work now. And I found somatic breath work, and I found it by accident. I thought it was a meditation class. I've been doing a lot of meditation. And then I had the breathwork experience, the release of like an emotional release, but without having to use the conscious mind. And it just blew me away. And I was like, hang on a minute, like, what the hell just happened? I need to know more about this somatics thing. And it went from there. And then the somatics led to working with the nervous system and working with a coach who specialized in trauma and somatics in the nervous system. And he taught me like all these tools and skills, and it gave me so much healing. But the more freedom that I got internally from the nervous system tools, like the more I started to want freedom in my external life, but to also share the tools that I had with other people, like my colleagues. And that was where the first kind of dream and the coaching business started to kind of come alive a little bit.
So when you started when you began to heal and began to appreciate and experience the power of somatic breath work, you were still working, you were still employed as a sergeant. Okay.
Yeah.
And were you one of the first that you knew of to do this type of healing work outside of the job, or was it something that was talked about? Did your company, did your group offer, offer any sort of support in meditation? Like, was it talked about in the police force?
So I would say that there was nothing like this like ever spoken about. And I think if I said the word healing in a police station, I would just have everyone like laughing at me. I think I remember I'd said like I did yoga and meditation once, and like the room was just like in hysterics. So I almost had this like double life of like doing all these healing modalities, but like in quiet. I was doing it and I wasn't sharing it with anyone. And then I moved police forces actually. I had a transfer to another police force. And that was in itself a healing experience because I had a completely different experience. I had a different team. It was a breath of fresh air. And by that point, I'd really started to embody the tools and the kind of techniques that I wanted to share. So when I went in there, I shared about them more openly, and I did start like talking to my colleagues about them, and I did an input um, one day to a group of senior managers, and it was great. However, there was a bit of conflict because they didn't want me to do it externally, so they didn't want me to have a business externally that showed myself as a police officer helping other police officers
Why?
because they felt like it was using my job for personal gain. And when I wanted to do it internally, there was issues around, well, you're employed to do this job and we can't release you to go off and do X, Y, and Z because we need you here. And then when I spoke to the wellbeing team, like they had their own agenda. They are non-police officers and they've developed their own project of how they like let's risk assess people's trauma, and they weren't open to any of this because they wanted to run with what they had, even though this would have been a beautiful addition to what they were offering. It was just like, yeah, we're not really open to any changes right now, but you can come and join this project if you like. And I was like, no, I'm maintaining the integrity of my own work, and it's completely different to like what you're doing. So I suppose it was like a lot of doors being closed around me, and just I wanted just to see what I could do with it. And like I was like, I could always come back to policing, but I might not ever like be in this have this opportunity to really get to run with this. And I think I just wanted to see as well, like person that I could become. Like, can I talk about this experience that I've had in the police? Like, we're not allowed to really talk about the police outside of the police. So can I start becoming that person that gets the courage to share my experiences and tell people what it's really like, but also share from the heart because emotions aren't really spoken about in the police either. Like the way I'm talking and speaking to you on this call, like would never have any of these conversations in the police. So I think for years I was like restricted in this tiny little kind of, it felt like a cage. So I was really excited to see who I could become.
Course. And that's, I mean, that's kind of like the crux of being badass is being authentic enough and being courageous enough to question, who do I want to be? Who do I want to show up today in the world as? But now that you are out of the police, can you easily pinpoint why the police was so, and joining the police was so important to you for so many years? Like, what was it? And what I'm getting to is the difference between purpose and goals, right? Was your purpose tied up? Like, what was the purpose? Because now you're not there anymore. Like, why did you choose that? Why did your subconscious go there
Mm.
so long?
I was always drawn. It's one sentence. It's to use my experiences to help other people, so then they aren't in vain. And what I realized that the police is just one vehicle that you can use to express that purpose. And in having my own business, I am still using my experiences to help others so that they aren't in vain, and it's just in a different vehicle. And if that then takes a different direction, I can take my purpose and take it in any direction as long as it has that heart-centered focus of using my experiences to help other people so that they aren't in vain.
Beautiful. So, what is the number one thing you learned about yourself as a policewoman?
That's a really good question. There's a lot I could probably say. I think, are you wanting from the actual being a policewoman or from my collective experience?
Whatever comes to mind.
So, what I learned from my experience collectively was that my own limitations were actually the things that have been playing out in my experience, and the experiences that I was facing actually helped me to confront my own limitations. So that I was look, and what I mean by that is that I was looking outside of me for permission to feel, to be myself. So when I joined the police, I was looking for permission. Like, is it okay to grieve? Is it okay to have emotions and feelings? Like, is it okay to come as I am? And when that was a no, like I retracted and buried myself away and tried to just fit in with what was around me, which is a clue that actually that was a limit within myself that I needed to learn how to give myself permission to feel, to hold my emotions, and to show up as my authentic self without permission for other people. And then when you do that, then it's like a double-edged sword. Like people then like accept you for who you are. But being in the police taught me that it was actually my own limitations that were causing a lot of my experience to happen, and in confronting them and working through them, they've given me like access to like a different side of myself and helped me grow in ways that I could only have dreamt of, really.
So, and thank you for sharing that. When you think back on this, though, were there opportunities before the police, like where you could have done this, but you didn't recognize it? Because, I firmly believe that if we have a lesson to learn, the universe will keep giving us those opportunities until we learn it. And I'm wondering if you, now that you look back on your life, you're like, man, this sounds familiar. Wow, I remember back then that could have been a potential opportunity for me to learn that. When you think back on your childhood, being a teenager, for example, was there was there that opportunity then, do you think?
I think when I reflect back and think about my childhood and growing up, there was always like looking for that external permission to be myself because I didn't feel safe enough in myself to be myself. So it was almost, I was almost looking outside of me for permission, and that has caused a disconnect from my own authenticity. Like the need to belong was driving me at the sacrifice of my own authenticity. And that was coexisting simultaneously until it all came to a head and I had to integrate those parts of me back together and give myself permission to actually find out who I am as a person. And then the next step is to integrate that into the world and show up as yourself and show up authentically.
So interesting that you say that, and I want to do a deep dive on that because I think it's something that we all struggle with, which is balancing the need to belong with who we are authentically. And there is no one set way to navigate that. And that's why it's called a personal journey. That's why we are here, I think, as human beings, having this experience. But man, oh man, it can really be tough. So my question, Abbie, is this. What came first in your growth? Was it a belief that you actually no longer needed to belong? Or was it, I'm okay with who I am? Because they're kind of two different ways of looking at it, right? You can flip your middle finger at the world and go, I don't care that this is what the world expects of me. I don't need to be part of that. I don't, that's not my thing. Or it can be, I still want to be a part of that, but I'm determined to find out who I am first.
I think that's a really beautiful question. And what I found was from the first police force I worked at and being in that situation where I really wanted to belong. And when you're in the police, like your life depends on belonging. So authenticity will always be lost because you have this like inherent need to belong. And when I hit that really rock bottom moment and I realized how much effort I'd put into trying to belong and trying to kind of be part of a team and to create that community around myself, and like how actually I felt like some people, there was, like I said, that I felt like some people turned away from me at that point, and I was like, that has all been for nothing because when it really mattered, it didn't matter. So at that point, it was a real defining point of like, so you now need to do what is true for you. You need to start taking those steps. And that was a really painstaking process. Like I learned that if from whatever reason, like things from your childhood, like you have fear around being seen or being like authentic, like the fear of visibility, like walking into authenticity is almost like, why would you want to walk over glass essentially? It's like, why would you want to put yourself through that pain? But I've since learned that actually that is the path of our hearts. Like authenticity is in terms of emotions, like the highest vibrational emotion. Like we think it's love, but it's actually authenticity. So therefore, our default state as human beings is to be authentic. And I always feel like there's been an inner conflict and inner pain that I haven't been able to be like truly myself, like for my whole life until I switched over to like, okay, right, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna be uncomfortable. Like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And then I accepted that pain because I knew that it was almost soothing, like that deeper pain of like, I really want to just be able to be myself and be accepted for who I am, but I just don't know how to be. So I'm going to disconnect when I learn to integrate and like accept and say, right, yeah, I'm going on this journey. Like the pain was something that I chose to work through.
Takes courage to do that.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think as you were talking that for many of us, putting on a uniform is akin to, um, I don't want to say hiding, but it's like a instant belonging because the world perceives, for example, the world perceives a policeman to be a certain way. And when you step into that and put on that uniform or and whatever, it's like, yeah, I don't need to really do anything right now because you see something that's preconceived, for example, and I'm
Mhm.
okay with it, right. I want to be, this is how I want to be seen. Strong, smart, kick ass, holder of justice. I can whatever comes to mind. But many of us, I think, we can adopt that for reasons, for personal reasons. I mean, joining the Girl Guides, you get a uniform, and I remember being so excited to be part of the Girl Guides because I wanted to be seen as that perfect little girl who could bake cookies. I can't bake cookies 40 years later, 50 years later, but I wanted the badges. I wanted to be seen as part of, as bigger than myself. And I remember thinking, everybody's doing it. This is what girls do, to be sort of seen and accepted as, this type of little girl. So just an observation that, boy, oh boy, you don't mess around, because going to the police, that's quite a persona to take on, when the real work is to be completely opposite to that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I always say that I don't think that it was any coincidence that I chose a career that almost caused me to uh, abandon my own identity almost because that was what was happening inside of me already. So there I was in an organization and career that was just continuing like my own unconscious patterns. Little did I know that it was also be the thing that would make me confront them all.
Well, that's what life is often about, right? Is when we see those, when we recognize the signs. Okay, so how many years were you in the force?
6.
You were in the force for 6 years. You have made the courageous decision to leave the force and pursue work as a somatic healer. Talk to us a little bit about your journey between leaving and, I guess, starting your business.
So I was already doing this work when I was still in the police force. So I was working with clients, and what I do now is similar to what I was doing back in the police, but I have focused it down now to working with emergency services. So whilst I was in the police, I was working with a lot of a broader group of people. So just anyone interested in that type of work. But I really made the decision like, I'm going to put my hat in the ring here. I'm going to talk to police officers about healing and hence healing blue hearts. So the blue comes from In the UK, we refer to the emergency services as the blue light services. So I was like, that's really what's drawn me in. Like, I want to share these tools and these skills with the emergency services, like in terms of like supporting my colleagues and having that personal connection. But I think there's almost for that full circle philosophy and thinking about me joining the force in 2018, who just lost their mum and had all these internal, you know, challenges to overcome. So I really focused down, and within that, I start to look about, well, what is the transformation that I'm going to offer police officers? Like, where are they now and where do they want to be? And what I've really seen in my own experience and felt in my own experience and from talking to police officers of this state of stress and burnout and disconnection. And I really resonated to that so much. And the wanting to move back into a place of essentially, I use these words, it won't be the words I used to describe, but that reconnection back to their self and back to their emotions and to reclaim their energy levels. And relationships are a really key factor in that, because the disconnection, like, it follows you home. It's not just at work that you become disconnected, sorry, like it follows you home and impacts every area of your life. I remember at my point of disconnection, I thought there were parts of me that were lost forever. And I also thought I would never be in a relationship again because I didn't know how to love anymore. And it was just because I was so disconnected from my emotions. So it's that reconnection back to the self and back to the relationships and just to really thrive and make the most out of the environment. And so I take them through, right, there's 3 pillars in Healing Blue Hearts, and it's to heal. So doing the healing work I say it's like clearing the path for the future. So heal the past to clear the path for the future. And then reconnect back to the self, reconnect back to who you are as a person, connect back to your heart and connect back to your body so that you can connect with who you are, you can connect with other people, and you can start having those relationships that you really truly desire again. And then from that point is when you can really then start to take those tools and skills and apply them into your life so you can have the growth and the development. So whether that's to stay in the police and become a really good leader, or you move out of the police and you use your experiences again to go on to help other people. Like, there's an element of like growth and transformation, but you've got that underpinning healing work and foundational work that's going to set you so well within that. And the tools and modalities I use is nervous system regulation. That helps people to basically, it gives you control over your internal state, and that helps you learn to move from a stressed state into a relaxed state. And that's what we're missing at the moment. Like, in the emergency services, there's high levels of stress and burnout, but we actually don't know how to move out of those states, so we get stuck there. Then there's the somatic awareness, like reconnecting back to the body. And when you reconnect back to yourself, it helps you to reconnect to other people. So that's the relational element of the nervous system regulation.
Got to jump in here because I understand the lingo. I'm a coach. But
Yeah.
when you say reconnect to yourself, like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm going to come at you like I have never heard this word before.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for adding that clarifying question in. So we're living in a world where we are just living from the neck upwards, from the mind, and everything is done from the mind here, overthinking, living in the brain. And what that does is that it disconnects us from everything that's happening down here in the body, also known as the soma. So if I say the word somatic, it just means of the body. And what I say to people is that we have more body than we actually do mind. And within the body, it's actually 4 times more powerful and more intelligent than the mind itself. So when we look at the physiology and the structure of the body, we have 80% afferent nerves running up and 20% efferent running down, meaning we've got 4 times the amount of information and data coming up to the brain than we have going down. But the issue is, because we've only been taught to live from the mind upwards, we don't really know how to access that intelligence and that information. And what I've also learned is the way that we use our physiology is backwards. So we're so focused on neuroscience and mindset. But if we look at the way that the body actually works, we instinct first, we feel second, and think last. So if we relate only to the brain, we are missing 67% of the equation. And just to give you an example, to put that into context, what I mean by that, if someone broke into our house in the middle of the night, we would have an instinctual reaction. It's going to be fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We don't consciously think about that reaction. It happens automatically, instinctually, because if it was up to the conscious mind, it would be too slow. So that happens instinctually. That then creates an emotion. It might be that we feel scared, we might feel angry, or we might feel courageous, like, right, I'm going to go and confront them. Emotions have a lifespan of about 90 seconds, but it's actually the stories in the brain that keep an emotion going. And by the time we get to the story, I don't feel safe in my own house. Something bad's going to happen to my kids, X, Y, and Z. And so how, if we're only living from the mind upwards, we can see actually how much the equation that we're actually missing. And that is the power of the reconnecting back to yourself and reconnecting back to your body, is that it's you are essentially looking at yourself holistically instead of one-dimensionally, just from the mind. You're reconnecting back to the multi-dimensionality of like the human body and the human mind and working as one.
Okay, great explanation. I love the visual. So does on a simple layman's term, when you offer someone the advice to, I'm going to help you reconnect, is the first thing that they need to do, that I would need to do, is just pay attention to what I'm feeling below the chin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that we've done a little bit of a dive on that. So what I'm hearing is that we have created stories, and I know this because, of course, I'm a coach. I'm a certified mastery method coach as well, so I understand somatics. But just to be very clear, we do feel things in our body first. There's instinct, gut instinct, whatever you want to call it. That creates emotions, and the emotions then create a story, and the story gets stuck in our brain. And because we only, out of habit and how we are raised, because we tend to live in our brain only, we just live with the story, whether it's true or not. All the while stuff's going on in our body that's going, no, 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 that's not actually the story. Jesus, it's not the story. It's not the story. And that's what can cause us illness, discomfort, our nervous system to be offline. Is that what I'm gathering from?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I need to take a deep breath with that awareness. And of course, I already know all this stuff, but still, when the more you hear it, especially the way that you described it, it is incredibly powerful. Okay. So today you are supporting first responders. What has the response been like?
So it's taking a little bit of time, from the basis that this is something that we have never heard of in the police or any other emergency service. We have been solely relying on the mindset work, neck upwards neuroscience. And I think there's also a myth that if we start feeling our emotions again, like, isn't that going to be overwhelming in the police if every job we go to is like full of emotions? And so there's actually within it, there's an element of sharing story and giving people relatable scenarios and experiences and transformations of like what that actually means. So this is an educational piece that comes first. But the more that I'm starting to work with people on a one-to-one basis, I did a masterclass the other week, and that got a really good response because they were like, oh, like when you say it like that, it makes complete sense. And there was loads of things that I didn't know about. So it's starting to get people aware that there's a different approach. But I suppose the challenge is when we've done something a certain way for so long, and that's how we're operating, is to think about just solely on the level of the mind. It will take a little bit of time to be able to think, oh, what do you mean? Let's do some like body-centered work, and like that sounds like something you do in a yoga studio, not in a police force. So there's that, just bridging the gap. I do think that we'll get there eventually, but it might just take a little bit of time.
I just got to say, wow, it takes courage. Well, sometimes it takes courage to get out of bed, right? No word of a lie. I think we've all been there. But to consistently put your foot forward when the response isn't instantaneous, or they're
Mhm.
getting it, or it's slow, that takes another whole level of courage, I think. And I just want to say thank you. It is neat. The work that you do is so needed, especially as it's focused on first responders. I have some friends, I know people here locally that support first responders, coach them, and create a community for them. But to your point, this is the beginning. It's 2024, and it's still not talked about. My understanding, and you've just backed it up, is that it's not talked about that much in that area, and that's the area that needs it the most. That's those, hats off, and God love the people that protect us and have to deal with such difficult, traumatic situations every single day, possibly of their working career. So I love that you're doing this. What is next for you in line? You've done a master class, you've got some one-on-one clients. What's next on the agenda for you?
So I'm currently writing a book, and I'm about two-thirds of the way of the first draft. And what I really wanted this to be was to make it accessible for anyone in the place who just want to take a book and sit in their room and like look at it and learn about somatics and nervous system without ever having to ask anyone or to tell anyone that they're looking at it. Just to kind of be a tool that is available to anyone. Like my dream would be for those coming into the police force to have access to it as like a guide, and a tool. And I would love if recruits could come in and learn these tools and skills, but I'm just focusing on the book for now, and I'll see where that takes me. And I'm also in the stage of my breathwork qualification where I'm about to do the practical assessments. So I'll be really starting to see how I can take that out. Like I'd love to go into police stations and like do a breathwork class. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
You need to talk a little bit about breath work. Full disclosure, I have done a little bit of breath work, and I've never resonated with it. The first time I did it, I hyperventilated. I think I was just like beside. It just didn't quite work for me. And I remember thinking, I want to have that experience. I hear my peers going, "Oh my God, that was, euphoric and mind life altering." And I'm like, life altering? I'm coughing. I'm out of breath. Like, what the fuck? What? So I would love, stop laughing. I would love you to explain breath work for us, because again, it's a term that I'm familiar with, but some of my listeners may not be. So what is it, and why do you find it so powerful?
So the style that I am training in specifically, there's a lot of different styles of breathwork, is somatic breathwork. And as I said before, the word somatic just basically means of the body. And it again comes back to the separation between the mind and the body that we're living in society. We're living in our minds. We're very busy lives. We're overthinking. We're burned out. We're stressed. So the idea of breath work is to reconnect the mind back to the body using the breath so that they can work together instead of against each other. And then the power of the somatic breath work, and the reason why I really see this as being so beneficial for the emergency services, is that we hold a lot of stress and tension and stored emotions within the body. And somatic breathwork bypasses the conscious mind and helps to release those emotions from the body. So it helps us to express and release emotions, which then has a natural impact on our nervous system where it can help us return to regulation. And then a consistent practice will help us to move the body from a stressed state into a relaxed state using the breath. So there's like a long-term benefit, and for people to also know that the breath actually controls the nervous system. So everything that we've got to actually help us heal from stress and burnout and anxiety is actually within the body. In the same way that the body knows how to heal a cut and grow hair, like the breath controls the nervous system, and that's where we express our emotions and express our stress and anxiety and depression. Like it's the vehicle to which can help us heal.
So thank you for that explanation. It made perfect sense to me. And all I could think about was we take our breath for granted. I take my breath for granted. And I I know when I help my clients or even myself or my children to just calm down in a moment. Like the first thing I say is, guys, just breathe. My hand up,
Mhm.
maybe your other hand on your belly, and just feel the breath going in. And it is a way to very quickly calm your nervous system. But I have never, full disclosure, taken it much further than that. And now I'm excited. Now I'm like, okay, I want to do this. When you do, the experience that I've had in the past when I was being certified was breath work was always done while you were lying down, and you could hear the teacher through the air, through your, headphones. But is it possible to have a breath work practice where you're sitting up or you're standing up? Does it have to be a laying down experience?
No, so the breathwork practice that I am being trained in, we have three journeys. So we have a daily journey, which is about 5 minutes, and you can do like kneeling, which I find really nice. Then there's a reset, which is about 20 minutes, and then there's a full journey, which is an hour. And the hour journeys are really good as a big system clear out and a release, but actually little and often is like more powerful than like having these big journeys where you have these big releases all the time. So I love that there's like versatility there to actually teach people to use it as a tool, like a daily tool that doesn't take very long, or like something that's in between. And then to maybe do a couple of the bigger, longer journeys at times where you have maybe more challenges going on, or you want a bit more space to reconnect with yourself and take some time for yourself. And just to touch upon like your experience as well, like everyone can have different expressions and different releases, but the depth of like understanding from the nervous system that the training that I've taken has given me is that sometimes if your nervous system is in more of a stressed state and you start doing active breathing, like you're going to take yourself up there quite quickly, and to be able to recognize that in someone and actually give them the opposite technique to connect them to the side of the nervous system that's going to calm them down and relax them. So it's having like the discernment and the attunement to be able to see where people are at and to help them take that there. And that's going to make people feel safe and to get a good experience without thinking every time I go to breathwork, I'm going to have a panic attack.
Good call out for sure. And I tongue in cheek, I knew I wasn't giving I wasn't. I didn't go into it with oh, I'm so excited. It was like, oh, what is this crap? Like, oh, all right, fine. I'll lay down. I'll do all the stuff. So, um, totally, I take ownership for that. Abbie, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. What are some things that you do for yourself that you wouldn't mind sharing with our audience? That one or two tips, maybe even three if you have them, that really help you stand in your authenticity, help you face the day. Do you have anything that you can share with us?
Yes, so daily grounding, like that daily breathwork practice that I do in the morning, is like a system reset. Then I do a somatic awareness practice, and it only takes a few minutes, and anyone can do this. So if you close your eyes and just see what you're noticing in your body, so what are your physical sensations? Then what are you feeling? Like what are your emotions? What is the story in your head? And are they connected? And then what's the one thing that I need to do? Like what's my innermost need from that? So that's like a daily like navigation and attunement piece of being able to work out how I'm actually feeling and what I need that day. And then the other thing that I like to do is it's a bit more of like the one that I think about what is the step that today that I'm a bit scared of taking, like what's the one thing I'm avoiding? And then I try and like push myself into doing that or take a step towards it so that I'm constantly kind of working towards that one thing that I'm avoiding that I know actually if I get to the other side of is going to open up a new layer of like freedom, growth, authenticity. So that's my three tips.
So good and so juicy. And I really appreciate that you called out. Sometimes it's just one step closer to what you're avoiding.
Mm.
It is okay to feel fear about something. It is okay. Part of being human is recognizing and giving ourselves permission to feel the feels. But whenever we take action, I believe we're telling the universe, we're giving us signals like, hey, I'm serious about this shit. I am serious. So this is what I can manage today. So 3 great tips: center in your body for a little bit in the morning, and then ask, do a little scope. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? And what do I want to do with that? And then, of course, take action, aligned action towards your goals. Thank you so much. Those are great tips. I'll make sure to drop all of the ways that you can connect with Abbie in the show notes. Hope you have an amazing day, Abbie, and please do keep in touch. We'd love to know more about when you finish with your somatic training and where you're at in the world with your business. Abbie, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your story and your wisdom and your insights. You are a total badass. Folks, check the show notes because I will drop all of the ways that you can connect with Abbie. And when her book is ready, it'll be in the show notes too, no matter when that ends up happening. We would love to know more about healing blue hearts and how that goes for you. My name is Mahara. This has been the Art of Badassery. I will see you next week. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to another badass episode. Your support means the world to me. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, don't forget to like, share, and rate the episode on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback keeps the badassery flowing. And hey, if you're ready to unleash your inner badass and conquer whatever life throws your way, why not book a complimentary badass breakthrough session? Just click the link in the show notes to schedule your session, and let's kick some serious butt together. Until next time, stay fearless, stay fabulous, and of course, stay badass. This is Mahara signing off.